What happens when your closest friend becomes your most terrifying nightmare? This case will rattle everything you thought you knew about love, loyalty, and the razor-thin line between devotion and destruction. November 2000. A woman storms into a Montreal hospital, blood on her clothes, a lifeless newborn in her arms. She claims it was a tragic home birth. But when doctors ask to examine her, she refuses. And that refusal is where the real horror begins. Just 10 kilometers away, another woman, a mother of 3, vanishes without a trace. Her name was Keisha Moreau, and within hours, her story would explode into one of the most disturbing crimes in Canadian history. This is Grim Vault, where we uncover the stories time tried to forget. As detectives followed the scent of 2 seemingly separate tragedies, they began to uncover a chilling connection, one that traced back to a childhood bond that had twisted into something far darker. You see, Rochelle Duvall, the woman clutching the baby that night, was no stranger to Keisha. They weren't blood, but they may as well have been. Raised on the same block in Montreal's Park Extension neighborhood, Rochelle and Keisha had been inseparable since they were 7. They called each other sisters. They were sisters in every way except the biological. Both quiet, both scarred by unstable homes and a system that failed them. They clung to each other like lifelines, the kind of friendship that feels invincible. But under the surface, something darker was growing. Keisha's early years were turbulent. Foster care, shelter hopping, the kind of childhood that teaches you to survive, not to dream. But she tried anyway. She stayed in school, got her diploma, became a mom at 16, and fought tooth and nail to keep her little family together. 3 kids by 22. She wanted a better life for them, maybe even become a photographer one day. She was working toward that, slowly, quietly. Rochelle's path was far less stable and far more violent. At 14, she was already on police radar for assaulting her mother. By 15, she'd set fire to their kitchen in what some claimed was a cry for help. Others said it was rage, plain and simple. By 16, she had her first child. By 17, a second. But things spiraled when her infant daughter was hospitalized with injuries too severe to ignore. Witnesses said the baby looked like a broken doll. Doctors weren't sure she'd survive. The child did, but not without scars. By age 7, she was still in diapers, barely able to form words. It was a tragedy no child should endure. And yet, in 2002, Rochelle regained custody. The system said she'd completed all the necessary programs, that she'd changed. But the truth? It had only gotten better at hiding. That same year, she was arrested again, this time for using a stolen credit card. Another red flag, another chance missed. Meanwhile, Keisha's life, while modest, was moving forward. She'd gotten her kids back after a brief custody battle, moved into a small flat, and started community college. She kept her children close, never letting them wander alone. Her neighborhood wasn't safe, but she was doing everything she could to protect them from the world she had survived. She had no idea the real threat was standing right beside her. But what would drive a woman to turn on her closest friend? What happened behind closed doors in the weeks before Keisha and her children disappeared? And how did it all lead to that hospital room? What investigators found in Keisha's apartment would shake even the most hardened detectives and confirm their worst fears. Most mornings, Keisha sat alone on a cracked blue milk crate, her eyes locked on her children as they played with a hand-me-down plastic tractor. To neighbors, it was nothing special. To her, it was everything. In a neighborhood stitched together by chain-link fences and whispered warnings, these quiet moments were her refuge. She walked her kids to the bus stop every morning, rain or snow, never trusting the streets to keep them safe. She was 7 months pregnant, and she'd already chosen the name, Hope. It wasn't just a name. It was a promise, proof that she still believed in tomorrow, even if yesterday never stopped chasing her. But just across town, that fragile dream was about to shatter. While Keisha planned for new beginnings, Rochelle Duvall was spiraling. The weight of her past clung to her like smoke. Failed relationships, custody battles, brushes with the law. Her boyfriend, Keith Horn, was away with the Navy, her anchor gone, her mind adrift. She told no one she was pregnant. Because she wasn't. Not really. But on the night of September 16, 2000, Rochelle made a call to emergency services that would ignite a series of events no one could have predicted. She claimed she had just delivered a stillborn baby in the woods at De La Vérendrye Park. Paramedics rushed her to the hospital. She arrived with blood on her clothes and a lifeless newborn in her arms. But when doctors asked to examine her, she refused. She wouldn't let them touch her, wouldn't speak, wouldn't explain. No examinations, no answers, no logic, just silence. Her story shifted wildly under pressure. First, she said she'd been assaulted. Then she insisted she hadn't. Investigators noted her erratic behavior, her inconsistencies. Nothing made sense, except the unease growing in every room she entered. Meanwhile, an autopsy on the infant revealed no visible signs of trauma. But it also didn't confirm Rochelle's story. There was no evidence that she had given birth. Still, the baby, whom Rochelle named Tiffany Horn, was sent to the city morgue. And 5 days later, Rochelle organized a funeral. The director noted that something was off. Just minutes before the service, Rochelle asked to postpone. She said more family members needed time to arrive. Only 2 ever showed up. Even Rochelle was 2 hours late. One of the few mourners was Keith, back from deployment, standing at the graveside of a child he believed was his. He had no idea he was burying a lie. While Rochelle played grieving mother, Keisha was missing. Her phone silent. Her social media dark. Her door locked. Her family began to panic. Calls turned to police reports. Worry turned to dread. After the funeral, Rochelle said 6 words that would change everything. "I cut the baby out of Keisha." At first, Keith thought it was trauma talking. A cruel, grief-fueled fantasy. But then he looked at her. No tears. No tremble. Just that flat, matter-of-fact stare. It wasn't what she said, he later told police. It was how calm she was when she said it. That was the moment it clicked. Something was horribly wrong. And if he waited even one more minute, he might be too late. Without hesitation, he called police. Within hours, investigators located Keisha's body in the overgrown brush behind Rochelle's apartment. She had been missing for 6 days. Next to her, a pair of bloodied scissors. Rochelle was arrested that same night, and what she told them in custody chilled even veteran detectives. On the morning of the 16th, Keisha had stopped by Rochelle's mother's house in Laval. It was supposed to be just another visit. 2 old friends. Maybe some lunch, maybe baby talk. Instead, Rochelle attacked her, striking her over the head with a table leg. Not once, not twice. She kept going, until the room went still. What could drive someone to do this? Was it jealousy? A fractured mind? Or something else entirely? Keisha was still alive when Rochelle bound her wrists and ankles with duct tape. The room was quiet, unnaturally so. But beneath that silence was chaos. Shallow breaths, muffled cries, the scratching sound of a woman trying to stay alive. At one point, Keisha stirred, her body instinctively resisting, trying to crawl, escape, breathe. But Rochelle, now fully untethered from reality, struck her again. And this time she taped her mouth shut. What happened next crossed into something far more than murder. Rochelle dragged Keisha's weakening body into the bathroom. And with a pair of surgical scissors purchased a week prior, she began to cut. Keisha was still alive when Rochelle opened her abdomen in a frantic attempt to extract the baby girl she had claimed was hers. She lost blood, liters of it. Her strength slipped away, moment by moment, until there was nothing left but silence. Rochelle cleaned the scene with disturbing calm. She wrapped Keisha's body in a plastic shower curtain, hauled it out the back of the apartment, and dragged it into a vacant lot behind her building, an overgrown patch of weeds that swallowed evidence like a graveyard made of brush. Then she walked away. But this wasn't spontaneous. This was premeditated. A week before the attack, Rochelle had quietly purchased supplies for a home birth: rubbing alcohol, a bulb syringe, scissors. She even faked a pregnancy, stuffed clothes, told Keith the baby was his, and begged him to come home from the Navy. This wasn't just a murder. It was a calculated, delusional attempt to build a family from the destruction of someone else's. And it wasn't over. News reporters outside police station headlines roll. Mother of 3 found dead. When the news broke, Keisha was dead. Rochelle had been arrested. The community was gutted. But horror has layers, and just when it felt like the worst had come to light, a darker question emerged. Where were Keisha's children? It was Friday, September 22nd. Officers returned to Keisha's home in the John the Shields housing complex, hoping to find recent photos of her 3 children, DeAndre, 7, Ivan Jr., 2, and Janella, 10 months, to alert the media and start a citywide search. They'd been gone for days, no calls, no sightings, and Rochelle's children had been found safe. So where were Keisha's? Police spoke again with Keisha's partner, Ivan Collins, who said the last time he saw the children was Monday, the 18th. That night, Rochelle had taken them. She told him Keisha had asked her to pick them up. That was a lie, but one so carefully placed, it bought her time. When confronted again, Rochelle cracked. She told officers where they needed to look. And what they'd find was something no officer, no parent, no human being could ever prepare for. As they stepped inside, a rancid odor hit them like a punch. One officer described it as decay, sickness, and something worse, something wrong. And then they opened the laundry units. 2 of the children were crammed into the washing machine. The 3rd was curled inside the dryer. Naked, decomposing. Left there for 5 days. 5 days. And police had unknowingly walked past them during their first visit just hours earlier. The weight of that realization would haunt the department forever. Rochelle didn't stop with Keisha. On the same day, she murdered her best friend and cut the baby from her womb. September 18th, she told Ivan a new story. She said Keisha wanted her kids and her car. With that false narrative, Rochelle retrieved the children. One by one, she placed them in the same bathtub where their mother had died. And there she drowned them. Some reports say she gave them cough syrup first. A final mercy? Or another layer of cruelty? No one knows. She never explained, never cried, never answered the one question that burned in everyone's mind. Why? What could possess someone to not only take a life, but erase an entire family? They were buried days later, together in the same caskets, together, just like they'd been in life and in death. Someone took the life of their best friend. Someone destroyed an entire family, and the questions still echo in the silence left behind. What drives a woman to murder 3 innocent children? Was Rochelle ever really pregnant? Was it delusion? Calculation? Or a mind splintered so deeply even she didn't know where truth ended and fantasy began? No answer ever seemed to satisfy. Over 700 mourners filled the church, faces blurred by tears, heads bowed under the weight of what had been lost. A mother, her children, a future stolen. They shared stories. Keisha's wild kitchen dances, the way her kids lit up the hallway with laughter, how she never stopped trying, even when the world gave her every reason to. In just 3 days, the community raised over $370,000, 0 cents. They couldn't undo what happened, but they made sure Keisha and her children were buried with love, not silence. But grief gave way to justice. At first, Rochelle Duvall was charged with the murders of Keisha and her unborn daughter. But as the facts emerged, so did 3 more charges, 1 for each child. She pleaded not guilty, and that plea triggered a deeper examination into her mind, her past, and what may have been broken long before the crime ever happened. At first, Rochelle had a public defender, but when prosecutors announced the death penalty was on the table, the state brought in a capital case expert. Her new attorney painted a troubling picture. A woman with a fractured mind, an IQ in the mid-70s, a childhood full of locked wards and padded rooms. And yet, somehow, she'd raised 2 children of her own. But this wasn't the story of a mother who simply unraveled. This was a mind that had been splitting quietly for years, until it finally broke. That summer, Rochelle changed her plea to guilty. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole for the murder of 5 human beings: Keisha, her unborn daughter, and her 3 children. But it didn't end there. 3 months later, Rochelle tried to undo everything. She claimed her attorneys had failed her, that they hadn't properly investigated her mental health, that they didn't even receive her psychiatric evaluation until after she'd already pleaded guilty. She argued that her evaluation never assessed her sanity at the time of the crime, only her ability to face trial. The appeal sparked a chain of legal filings, psychiatric reevaluations, and motions for post-conviction relief. It dragged on for years, 2012 to 2016. As new attorneys cycled in, deadlines were extended, and petitions were reworked over and over again. At one point, her request for a new lawyer was denied. At another, her petition was dismissed entirely for failing to meet legal standards. But Rochelle wouldn't stop. In 2020, she won an appeal. The court allowed her a rare second chance to refile her case and continue the fight. Today, Rochelle Duvall is 42 years old, incarcerated at Logan Correctional Center in southern Ontario. Her case remains buried in red tape and ongoing appeals. But for Keisha's family, the fight is over. After exhumation, the baby girl Rochelle claimed as her own was finally laid to rest beside her real family, Keisha and the children, beneath one headstone in a quiet cemetery just outside Marstott, Ontario. Some stories don't end in prison cells. They linger. This case left wounds no sentence could stitch shut, not because of how it happened, but because of who did it. A sister in all but blood. A godmother, a trusted protector who became the architect of unimaginable betrayal. They say monsters hide in the dark, but sometimes they sit beside us, laugh with us, raise our children. Trust isn't just fragile, it's lethal when it lands in the wrong hands. Subscribe to Grim Vault, where every week we dig into the cases time tried to erase, where truth hides in plain sight and the shadows speak louder than the silence. And the only way forward is to keep digging